Twitter CEO Dick Costolo, which is a hilarious name, went on CNBC to do an interview, and they did this hashtag. It was hashtag Ask Costolo, and for people to, just pick his brain and see how he started the company and all that stuff. And that's definitely a better hashtag than Ask Dick. That could have gone awry pretty quickly. But this segment kind of got derailed too, because about a third of the tweets were essentially protest tweets due to Twitter's harassment policy. So according to Think Progress, quote, Twitter's online safety terms center around how users should cope with online abuse by blocking rather than dealing with the reported abusers directly. Twitter has been reluctant to remove tweets or delete accounts in fear of violating free speech and compromising the openness of the web. But users say that approach alienates them and puts the onus on victims to manage threats and abusive behavior online. So they go on in the article to show some specific tweets that they used in the hashtag Ask Costolo thing, and some of them were, why hashtag Ask Costolo? Why is it that that Twitter simply told me to block when I was getting verbally abused? And it was all things of that nature. So, what are we to make of this? Well, look, there's no doubt that the issue of online abuse and, verbal harassment online, and even there's plenty of threats. I deal with threats all the time, being at least a semi-public figure. There's no doubt that's a serious issue, and there's no doubt that it can certainly hurt people's feelings tremendously, and even in some cases, some people have gone far enough where they commit suicide because of cyberbullying. It's very, very unfortunate. It's heartbreaking when it happens, but sometimes it does happen. But when it comes to going after the CEO of Twitter and telling them to change their policy, here's where I get lost. What specifically do you want him to do? So again, what their policy is, look, if somebody's abusing you, block them. Then they essentially won't be abusing you anymore. And if people ever do go as far as to do death threats and stuff, I know I've gotten them. Those accounts get deleted because that actually violates the law. That's one of the things that's not protected by the First Amendment. Direct threats of violence, right? That's against the law. So you can prosecute somebody if they do something like that. So I don't know what you would want Twitter to do. Do you want them to start open up a whole new department, and what they do is they just shut down accounts that do verbal harassment? But then what counts as verbal harassment? So for example, what I do on this show, all the time I go after conservatives and I go after religious people, and I go after, the passion that goes into some of my rants and the terms that I use and the names that I call. We are bordering on what some people could stretch and say, well, you're harassing. But I would argue I'm not harassing. I'm just stating facts and getting passionate. And if you disagree, fine, you're entitled to disagree, but you can't censor me because I disagree. So what do you want Twitter to do? Do you want them to go in there with a fine-tooth comb and they get to determine and pick what is hate speech and what isn't hate speech? But once you start doing that and you've opened Pandora's box, it's a genuine slippery slope because I don't know where you draw the line. Some brilliant, snarky joke, a tweet, could be considered, well, you're bordering on hate speech because you said something bad about religious people, or you said something bad about Muslims, or you said something bad about conservatives, or if you flip it, you said something bad about liberals. Look, in this case, I'm sorry, but I have to disagree with the protesters, and I have to disagree with the people who I think in this case are getting too liberal, right? Where they care so much about the negative impacts of the freedom that they're willing to crack down on the freedom. No, sometimes freedom has some horrible consequences associated with it. Look at alcohol and tobacco are illegal. How many people die because alcohol and tobacco are illegal? A lot of people. Does that mean we ban alcohol? No. I understand regulating it, and look, I would understand regulating Twitter too if the company internally decided they wanted to do a different policy, but I don't know what policy would be better than the one that already exists. I like the idea of if somebody is crossing a line with you, you can block them. I don't even really block anybody because I don't care. You can say whatever the fuck you want other than a death threat, which I have gotten. But Okay, block them, and then they're out of the way. What else do you want Twitter to do? I don't understand. Like, anything further, and they would be cracking down on freedom of speech, because it's a blurry line between something that is free speech and something that's harassment. Look, bottom line is, the policy they have, I think, is the least bad option of all bad options. And if it's something that's really, really a dangerous verbal threat, here's what you do. Go to the authorities. If it actually violates the law, you have legal recourse. If somebody says, I'm going to kill you, like has happened to me multiple times, you have legal recourse. You can do something about that. So don't blame Twitter. You know, look, I know these people mean well. Don't get me wrong. I know they mean well. They don't want people to be cyberbullied, and they don't want people to get their feelings hurt. And in some cases, people go as far as committing suicide, and it's heartbreaking when that happens. But you need to make sure that the solution isn't worse than the problem. Okay? Sometimes freedom of speech means even speech you disagree with to your core. If freedom of speech only protected the speech that we liked, well, then that's not freedom of speech. If you don't believe in the freedom of speech for the people who you disagree with the most, you don't agree with it at all. So unless it's a direct threat of violence, then it sucks, but block them or suck it up. You know, you're out there on the internet. The internet is supposed to be a forum where it's totally free, and there are so many upsides to that, and there are some downsides. But to me, it seems like whatever possible regulation might come in to change the policy would probably be worse than the system that we have right now.